Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another extremely topical and extremely timely AMET webinar. Today is day 269 of the war with Hamas. As most of you know, my name is Sarah Stern. I'm the founder and president of AMET. AMET is, as you all know, an unabashedly pro-Israel, pro-American think tank and policy institute, and we specialize in the entire Middle East. We write and publish at least one article a week. We're on Capitol Hill almost every day, meeting with members of Congress and their staffers who've grown to rely on us for our thoughtful and intelligent analyses. And the most wonderful thing that we do is we have our webinars. And today we have a webinar with one of my most favorite, thoughtful and courageous women, Sarit Zahavi of the Alma Center. None of this could be possible unless you, our supporters, support us. So if you like what you hear every week, please support us at www.ametonline.org. And please also support the wonderful work of the Alma Center at israel-alma.org. And on each page, look for our donate buttons. This week, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that we are moving toward the end of the phase of the war with Hamas and Gaza. Yet the war with Hezbollah looms. In fact, there has been a war of attrition going on with Hezbollah since October 8th, where the people in Israel's north, such as Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi and her family, have been bombarded with rockets, drones, and missiles on a daily basis. Today, a senior commander of Hezbollah, Abu Ali Nasser, was killed near the Lebanese coastal city of Tyre. According to a speech that Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah said last week, Hezbollah has 100,000 fighters, and although there are thousands of Shiite fighters who are trying to join, he said, we don't need your help in the war against Israel. On Monday, while speaking at the Brookings Institute, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said, quote, Israel has lost its sovereignty to the north. In reality, this is true. Since October 8th, as most of you are aware, at least 16 estimates of 60 to 100,000 people from Israel's north have had to abandon their homes. Just imagine what it is like for families of 4, 5, 6 to live in 1 or 2 hotel rooms. Cities like Metula and Kiryat Shmoneh have suffered widespread damage, and right now there are fires throughout the north. As I write this, Germany, the Netherlands, Canada, North Macedonia, Kuwait, and now the United States have asked their citizens to evacuate Lebanon. A report from the London Times said that Hezbollah is storing weapons in Beirut Airport. Last week, Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu visited members of the 55th Paratroopers Brigade and said that the IDF has drawn up meticulous plans and is ready for war. Does Israel have any other choice but to go to war with Hezbollah? We know that Hezbollah has at least 150,000 to 200,000 missiles, drones, and rockets that could swarm Israel's defense systems. What precautions is the Israeli government putting in place to protect Israeli citizens? What has Lebanon's responsibility been as an enabler of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon? Does the conflict have the potential of enlarging itself into a wider war between Iran and its allies against the West? Here to discuss these questions and more is Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi, one of my favorite and most courageous women that I know. Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi is the founder and president of the Alma Research and Education Center. She served for 15 years as Israel's Defense Forces Intelligence Corps, initially in research and analysis, and later with the Northern Command. And she has had informative, in-depth briefings in Washington, D.C., with the United States Senate and representatives, and advises them all on security developments in Lebanon and Syria. If you have not visited the Alma Center, when things get a bit safer, I really advise everybody to do this. She has a breathtaking rapid force sort of computer simulation that everybody should have a chance to see, to understand what it's like to have to make split-second decisions to protect the people of Israel. Sarit was selected by the Jerusalem Post as one of the top 50 most influential Jewish personalities of 2021. So, Sarit, last week, Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant said that he's ready and prepared to defend the people of Israel from every Iranian proxy. We know that Amos Hochstein has been to the region and is trying to resuscitate UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which means that Hezbollah and its Radwan group must go north of the Litani River. Does the state of Israel have any choice but to launch a war against Hezbollah?
First, I want to open, before answering your question, and I promise I will answer it, with the background that I just put behind me. It looks like a beautiful sunset, which is exactly the time outside of Israel. This photo was taken from my balcony last Friday, and if I will move a little bit to this way, you will be able to see a line of smoke, or maybe to this way, you will be able to see below the line of smoke over here something that looks like a blast. Last Friday, I took the photo last Friday while I was watching the war zone from my balcony when we had a few drones and rockets that were launched from Lebanon towards the Western Galilee. My balcony is toward west, toward the Mediterranean, and this is what we saw. We saw the jets, we saw the drones, we saw the missiles, we saw pretty much of everything of 20 minutes of some kind of war in the sky. While we didn't have the alerts in my community, that's why I could take these photos, but we heard them from the nearby communities. This is not unusual. It's daily reality over here in the north, hearing all the sounds of war, and I live 9 kilometers from Lebanon. Those who used to live until October 7th, 0 to 5 kilometers from Lebanon are now evacuated. And the Ministry of Defense already published that it confirmed 1,000 requests for compensation of damages, especially about homes. We understand that today there was an assassination against a Hezbollah commander. This should be number 32 since this war started. One of the most senior ones of the 32, a parallel to a commander of a division. And this means that we're gonna have a rough evening. We are already having constant alerts since this assassination, and probably rough few days to come. Hezbollah started this war in October 8th. Israel was not interested in the northern front. I think Israel is still not interested in another full-scale front. But there is a change in the Israeli stance comparing to October 6th. And I think that this would answer your question, what I will just say. Israelis that are living here are not going to accept any agreement that will put us in the situation of our brothers and sisters in the south prior to October 7th. they lived under the threat of rockets and, not threats, constant launching of rockets and missiles from Hamas. And after almost 18 years that they lived like that, they were massacred. And Hezbollah already has the capability to, I would say now, infiltrate. Before the war it was invade, with thousands of combatants into Israel. It was prepared to do so. It has the religious motivation to do so. And once there will be a ceasefire that is based on the resolution that you mentioned, Sarah, this would mean that very quickly it will recover any damages that were caused to it by this war, and it will be able to do so again. And we are not going to let that happen. We are not against the ceasefire. Actually, we are all aware of the risks of war, the damages, and even the catastrophe that could be caused by war, including expansion of more fronts, not only north and south, but maybe east and even west from the Mediterranean. But at the same time, Israel has to protect itself. So if you ask me what's the best option is to find a diplomatic solution. But to find a diplomatic solution that will not be fictional, that will truly deal with the capabilities of Hezbollah. And I don't see this happening for now, unfortunately.
We know that Hezbollah has at least 150,000 rockets, drones, missiles, estimates of 200,000, some precision guided, and that Israel has been at war with Hamas in Gaza. Does Israel still have the capability in terms of armaments to be able to take on an arsenal such as Hezbollah's?
You know, this goes to YouTube. Um, I'll answer you this way. Iron Dome does not intercept rockets that are about to fall in open areas. That's why we have fires in the hot summer of Israel. Any interception, which happens every day, more than one, it means 2 interceptors. We launch 2 interceptors to be on the safe side. Every interceptor worth $50,000, while the rockets that are launched worth a few hundreds of dollars, maybe less than that. So clearly, just with rough calculation, after a war of 9 months, that we used thousands of interceptors in the south and in the north, we need more. And it's very clear, and we're going to need much more. At the same time, when we talk about the preparedness of the state of Israel to these kind of scenarios, it is clear that it's not only Iron Dome. This is a full preparation of aerial defense systems of various technologies, Patriot, Arrow, whatever. Each of them is activated towards the threats within seconds of decision, which is which to which launching and which munition. And it is clear that we are going to see barrages of drones, swarms of drones, barrages of rockets. Only in the past 9 months, we have seen 2,300 attacks by Hezbollah. This is not 2,300 missiles, that's 2,300 attacks. The attack 2 hours ago of barrage of rockets against the Golan Heights is counted as one attack in our database. A barrage of rockets, of 25 rockets on Friday evening to the north is counted as 2 attacks, one to the Western Galley, one to the Upper Galley. So when I'm saying 2,300 attacks, you can more than double that with regard to the amount of missiles and drones and rockets. We don't know how many because IDF doesn't publish the numbers, but we understand that the numbers are greater than that. There are munitions that are launched to relatively short ranges of 10 kilometers, around 10 kilometers, that cannot be intercepted, which are the anti-tank missiles. It's just a name. There is no connection to tanks. So there is no defensive answer to these missiles. There are no alerts before they are launched because the distance is very short and our systems do not recognize them. And the drones cross. And until now we have launching of up to maybe 4 drones at the same time. We didn't have swarms of 30 drones at the same time like what the Iranian had done in April. It was a huge success with the Iranian drones in April because they had to cross 2,000 kilometers. Here, they have to cross 200 meters. And that's why they succeed. And they cross, and the terrain enabled the drones to fly low between the mountains. And sometimes they are not revealed. Not all of them, of course, we intercept many of them. But on Friday evening, for example, we know that 2 drones fell in this incident that you see in my picture.
Sarit, for years and years, Alma has been doing excellent investigative work about the tunnels, the vast tunnel network from the north that runs underneath and across Israel's northern border. Borrowing from the lessons of October 7th, what can Israel do preemptively to ensure that Israeli soldiers and civilians aren't captured and held within the Hezbollah tunnels?
Look, there is no 100% in these issues. We can do a lot of things. I will elaborate in a minute. But it's important for me to clarify that all these things will eventually help us to reduce damages, not completely prevent them. Preventing damages of hostages, for example, taking hostages, which is part of the Hezbollah plan, it's important to emphasize it, is part of the Hezbollah plan to take Israeli hostages to become human shield. It was published by Hezbollah. Any defensive act that we should do, protecting the communities and investing in a barrier on the border and building shelters and recruiting more soldiers and training soldiers to defend communities. All of this should be done, and some of it, not all of it, some of it was done in the past 9 months. Is not an insurance to a Hezbollah attack trying to take hostages. There is no insurance. But at least to try to prevent this attack, we should prevent the capabilities. Hezbollah has an elite unit named Beirut Brigade of a few thousands of combatants that they were trained and experienced in doing exactly what the Nukhba of Hamas had done in the south, but they are experienced in the battles in Syria. So we believe that they are better soldiers, I'll put it this way, than the Nukhba of Hamas, or worse terrorists, if you like. To eliminate the capabilities of Hezbollah doesn't mean push them back north to the Litani River. It doesn't mean push them back 8 kilometers from the border, and it doesn't mean withdraw. All these terms are irrelevant to the situation because the distances are so close here that if they withdraw, like we heard last week by the IDF, that Radwan brigades were pushed back 8 kilometers from the border, but Hezbollah is still, other Hezbollah units are still on the border. This means that, again, once there is a ceasefire, they can come back. This means that if they have underground infrastructure, which we believe they have, they can come back. And that's why it's not enough to push them back. what should be done is to disarm them. There is a legal platform for that. There was a United Nations Security Council resolution that talked about the disarmament of the militias of Lebanon. It has nothing to do with Israel. It is all for the sake of the Lebanese themselves. This is for 2004. And international community should demand and should help, actively help, to disarm the militias, meaning Hezbollah. Disarm may help prevent the taking of hostages because there wouldn't be capability. As long as this capability is just pushed back, they will come back because they live there. We made a research at the Alma Center and we found that around 65% of the Hezbollah military operatives that were killed by the IDF in the current conflict, out of around 350, live in this area, in the UN area of operation, south to the Litani River, and the area that everybody is talking about pushback. So if they live there and they were buried there, why would they withdraw from this place? Hezbollah is a local organization embedded in the communities of South Lebanon. It's not a foreign militia that took over South Lebanon, that is oppressing the South Lebanese. No, the South Lebanese are part of Hezbollah, active part of Hezbollah.
Right.
And the only way is to disarm them, to take off the capabilities, the munitions, etc.
So Hezbollah recently published a video, which I'm sure you saw, with the key strategic sites within Israel. Do you feel
In
that
Haifa,
Israel,
mainly.
right? Do you think Israel has the defensive capability to be able to defend those sites? And can these rockets swarm Israel's defensive capabilities?
First, to say we translated the whole video, 9 minutes video, that probably is composed from few drones, not one. Because if you analyze the shade and you analyze what you see, you understand that the images were not taken at the same day, at the same time of the day. So this means that few drones penetrated into Israel in a distance of more than 30 kilometers and filmed the military and civilian infrastructures of Haifa. Haifa is the biggest city in the Galilee, in the north, not in the Galilee, in the north. And it has a lot of civilian infrastructures, including a big seaport, which is the main gate, actually, maritime gate to the state of Israel. And they filmed all of that. This has two reasons. First is the psychological warfare to threaten us, but also it is pure intelligence gathering. This is how you do it. This is how you map targets. Again, can we defend 100% from an attack that will come from Lebanon, not from Iran 2,000 kilometers, from Lebanon, which is just across, with swarms of a few tens of drones, for example, that will be launched from Lebanon to Haifa Bay, to the seaport, or to the gas rigs, or whatever over there, the hospital. It is enough that one drone will cross and create the damage. And we are aware of that. The hospitals up north are already underground. But civilians, not all of us have shelters. And not all the schools have shelters. And of course the damage will be huge. So, we can only do the maximum that we can do, but as I've said, it's not going to be a clean war. If there will be a full-scale war, we're already at war, as I've said, but if there will be a full-scale war, that Hezbollah will launch this kind of munitions to Haifa, to the same targets that it marked in the video, it will mean that there will be damages. There will be damages to military and civilian infrastructures in Israel. We know that.
So, a report from AP from June 23rd said that thousands of fighters from Iranian-backed groups throughout the Middle East are ready to come to Lebanon to join Hezbollah. Um, um, how large an army are we talking about that Israel has to confront?
First, I must say that Nasrallah himself addressed this issue, and it is clear that he is not interested in the coming of non-Lebanese to fight with Hezbollah. Lebanon is a very diverse country, but it seems like most Lebanese agree on one thing, that they don't want any more refugees. They have more than 1 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon that they didn't make them citizens, and it caused a lot of criminal problems inside the country. So I don't think they would want more non-Lebanese to come. But I think that a more probable scenario, which can answer your question, is that we may see attacks of this kind of militias coming from other borders of Israel, such as Syria and maybe even Jordan. Let's talk about Syria. There are proxy militias of Iran in Syria, and there are militias of Iran in Iraq that promise to come probably to the Syrian front and go from there. We evaluate these militias as less equipped and less professional than Hezbollah. But again, we shouldn't underestimate them, since eventually what you have to do to kill Israelis is to cross. I'm sorry to say it. You don't need to be the most sophisticated warrior. You need to cross and enter into a community, and our communities are next to the border, including next to the Syrian border. And today there was a terrorist attack in a mall not far from where I live, and two soldiers were attacked with a knife. One of them was killed by stabbing of a knife, and it's a mall that I go to the cinema with my little girl. It's like so it was just a knife. We talk of probably a few hundreds in each militia, which is a proxy militia. Iraq or Afghani militia, Pakistani militia, sometimes Syrian militia. That's one option. Or those that are also Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah in the Syrian front as well. And on top of that, you have very small militias. We mapped 36 of these that are based in the Golan Heights. They are subordinate to the IRGC. They are locals that live in the towns in the Golan Heights. Again, they are not that professional. They are not elite units. Each of them has maybe a few tens of terrorists. And they can also try to infiltrate. I'm not sure it's an invasion, again, the same way of Hamas, but infiltration from Syria is definitely an option. And as I've said, there are communities which are next to the border.
And you mentioned north, south, east, and west. There can be a tremendous amount of infiltration from Jordan as well into Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, if you will. So Israel has got to be prepared. And do you really believe that the war with Hamas in Gaza is coming to a close, or do you think that Hamas is going to replicate itself in another form? And
It's Hezbollah replicate itself by Hamas,
yeah,
and not vice versa. This was never Israel-Hamas war. I've been saying that since October 7th in every stage that I can speak. And it is not Israel-Hezbollah's war. This is the Iranian campaign against the long arm of the West in the Middle East, which is Israel. The campaign was meant to be a long campaign of a few years. That's the strategic rationale of the Iranians here. Its end goal is to bring to the destruction of the state of Israel. And in order to do so, they cultivated different kind of militias in all the surrounding countries. The effort that is coming from the Houthis of Yemen is part of that, and we've seen what they've done in the Red Sea. And we believe that sooner than later we will see efforts also in the Mediterranean. This is something that should be addressed as a regional war already going on, and not as something local, because that's the plan of the Iranians, and we are, unfortunately, all of us choose to ignore it. And this is wrong. We shouldn't ignore it. You know, when I see the Houthis of Yemen training to take over an Israeli community, everybody completely say, this is crazy. How can they get to Israel? It's 15 or 1600 kilometers from Eilat. But, you know, since October 7th, we should say, if they are training to do that, the next question that we should ask is how they are going to get there, because they are highly motivated to get here. Now the question is, what's the plan? There is a plan, we just don't know what it is. What's the plan? Are they going to come from Jordan? Are they going to come from the Red Sea? Are they going to be sent to Iraq and then to Syria and then from the Golan Heights? I truly don't know. But what I'm saying is that if they are training to take over an Israeli community, somebody is planning to send them to do that one day at some point from somewhere. We just don't know when and how. And we shouldn't assume that it's just Hamas and others are copying it. No, it's a campaign that was well planned. The Iranians talked about it before it started. Hezbollah has been talking about it before and after it started in its PR videos. I have all of them in my database, saying very, very clearly, we are going to attack you from all these fronts at the same time. Nasrallah talked about in total 100,000 combatants. I don't think it matters whether it's 100,000, 150 or 120. The bottom line is that it's a multi-front campaign. They call it unification of fronts. And we should address it this way, because eventually it is not a threat just against Israel, it is a threat against the Western world. Israel is considered the representative of the West with its values and democracy. Israel is considered the small devil, while the United States is considered the big devil.
So we know that last Friday, the Iranian representative to the United Nations said that if Israel launches a war against Hezbollah, it will be obliterated. And we know that the head of the octopus is Iran.
And we all fall to the Iranian narrative that says if Israel will launch war against Hezbollah, while Hezbollah already launched war against Israel in October 8th. And we should change the framing. Israel is not going to launch war against Hezbollah. Israel, if it will do so, will make a decision to finally protect its civilians, which are under constant attacks every day since October 8th in northern part of Israel.
As you mentioned before, Sarit, Amos Hochstein has been in the region talking about a resuscitation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. We know that is not really realistic, knowing what Hezbollah is. Do you think there is any diplomatic solution that Israel might be willing to accept?
If this, first, I am not speaking on behalf of my government. There is a difference between what I think and what my government think. I believe that my government is willing for a lot of compromises here. Again, which in my point of view are very problematic. I believe that my government is not, as I've said, is not interested in a major military campaign into Lebanon, and it will prefer a ceasefire. But if this ceasefire will not deal with the capabilities of Hezbollah, it will be very problematic to keep it, because eventually we will have to deal with the capabilities of Hezbollah, as I've said. if you ask me what's the diplomatic arrangement should look like, I hope that it will include a deadline to this disarmament of Hezbollah. As I've said, that's the end goal. And I hope that any monitoring force that will receive the mission to monitor this agreement or arrangement will be trustful and will be willing to clash with Hezbollah, because UN clearly is not interested in clashing with Hezbollah. Lebanese army is not interested in clashing with Hezbollah. Lebanese army collaborates with Hezbollah. And we need somebody who understands that Hezbollah is not going voluntarily to disarm if it will agree to any diplomatic arrangement, and there is an option it will agree. An option, I'm not sure this is what will happen, but there is an option that Hezbollah will agree. Hezbollah will agree. It doesn't mean that it will actually keep the promise. This is very important to understand. Signing an agreement or committing to an agreement, this cannot be our end goal. Our end goal should be the implementation of the agreement, and there is a huge gap between the two because we already had an agreement, as you mentioned, 1701 in 2006, and Hezbollah never intended to implement it and never implemented it.
Yes, and every year, our U.S. government appropriates money to the Lebanese armed forces, and let alone our taxpayers' dollars going to the UN for UNIFIL. And neither of those forces seem to act as a bulwark or leverage against Hezbollah, but have been co-opted by Hezbollah. And in fact, last Friday, the House voted on appropriations, and one brave congressman brought this up, but he was voted down, and we're still giving money to the Lebanese armed forces. Can you talk a bit about the ineffectuality of the Lebanese armed forces and UNIFIL?
Okay, that's two different questions, Lebanese armed forces and UNIFIL. Different forces, different interests, different kinds. Let's start with the Lebanese armed forces. Yes, United States gave billions of dollars since 2006 to the Lebanese army, and weapons and vehicles, etc. Inside Alma Center, I can say that there is a debate whether this should continue or not. But in any case, I want to set the facts right, okay? Lebanese army, if you decide to give an assistance to the Lebanese army, you should understand what's the purpose of that. The purpose cannot be an alternative to Hezbollah. The purpose cannot be disarming Hezbollah or fighting, or all of that is not going to happen, because Lebanese army and Hezbollah, it's the same family. Half of the combat soldiers of the Lebanese army are Muslim Shiites. You can have one family that one son will go to the Lebanese army and the other one will go to Hezbollah. Lebanese army collaborates with Hezbollah. We have seen this. I witnessed that on the border when I was on the border. I saw Hezbollah military operatives taking photos of me again and again and again on the borderline. And once I also saw the Hezbollah taking photos of me and the Lebanese army soldiers standing next to him, and they were talking and laughing, and he just accompanied him. I saw Hezbollah on watching towers of the Lebanese army, following an IDF drill. Hezbollah is using the vehicles of the Lebanese army. Lebanese army assisted Hezbollah to conceal its military activity in South Lebanon from UNIFIL. So clearly Lebanese army is not a solution. The only reason that I can see, and as I've said, not everybody agree with me inside Alma Center, but the only reason that I see to continue the support to the Lebanese army is in order to make sure that Iran is not supporting the Lebanese army, or Russia is not supporting the Lebanese army. But the question then should be, what kind of support? How much money? What kind of munition? You should assume that the bullets that you provide to the Lebanese army will be shot against IDF soldiers. As clear as that. France provided Tau anti-tank missiles to the Lebanese army. Against whose tanks? What's the threat? ISIS doesn't have tanks if it's against ISIS. Hezbollah has very few tanks if it's against Hezbollah. So what should you provide to the Lebanese army? You should provide it with capabilities to disarm Hezbollah and at the same time demand it to do so while you assume that it wouldn't, and make sure that you have the mechanism to monitor this process, because it will not do that without pressure. It will not. This is not going to happen. So all this logic that now we see with Hochstein, that we should empower the Lebanese army, and if we will empower the Lebanese army, it will disarm Hezbollah, that's a very small friction of the picture that says that the Lebanese army is weak. I agree on the statement that the Lebanese army is weak, but it doesn't mean that empowering it going to completely solve the problem. Which brings me to another statement. Lebanon is a failed state. Hezbollah is a member of the Lebanese government. Probably most of you saw the publications about the airport, the international airport in Beirut. And then the Minister of Transportation denied and invited the journalists to visit the airport while he prevented them from visiting the aerial cargo warehouse. Who is the Minister of Transportation of Lebanon? He's a Hezbollah member. So, you know, you cannot completely distinct the Lebanese government from Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not a foreign militia that took over Lebanon. It is a local militia that is taking over Lebanon. And that's why the tight relationship with the Lebanese army. Last week, the commander of the Lebanese army met with the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon. This was last week. UNIFIL. UNIFIL is saying clearly, our mission is not to enforce the resolution that Sarah mentioned, 1701. Our mission is to assist the Lebanese army establish this area which will be empty of any illegal weapon. Fine. But at the same time, there is an article in this resolution 1701 that says that UNIFIL should use all its capabilities to make sure that this area of operation is not used for hostile activity as we experienced in the past. 9 months already. It's not happening. UNIFIL during all these years, this has been 18 years, saying we cannot enter to private areas by this resolution. It doesn't authorize us to enter to private territories. Hezbollah based much of its munition in private territories, orchards, homes, etc. Okay, but then UNIFIL itself reports that from the helicopters they saw shooting ranges in open areas of South Lebanon, and that they didn't go there because Lebanese army didn't enable them. They're saying that there are areas that they wanted to go and check what's going on there, and Lebanese army prevented them from going there. There were watching towers of Hezbollah along the borderline that were built in the past 2 years. They were bombed already by the IDF. But before the war, UNIFIL wrote in its reports that they tried to go to these watching towers and they were blocked by individuals with civilian attire, which are Hezbollah. These were not private towers. These towers were branded as part of something like a Green Without Borders environmental organization, Lebanese organization, that its mission is to put off fires and to plant trees. No, this is a cover for the military activity of Hezbollah next to the border, and it's not private territory if it's a registered NGO in Lebanon. And the UNIFIL didn't try to forcefully enter into these places. So UNIFIL, the bottom line is that UNIFIL, this way or another, is not willing to clash with Hezbollah. It's a UN organization. How many UN organizations actually fought against others? And if this happened in the past in history, I want these guys to come. And this is not what we have here now.
So it's obvious after October 7th that Israel has to create an image once again of strength and deterrence. So would you recommend a preemptive strike against you, not the government, but you, Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi in the reserves, a preemptive strike against Hezbollah?
There is no preemptive strike because we already started the war, so we cannot preempt something that already started. But I think in this I agree with my government. A full-scale war is the last option because I'm aware of the cost of it. Yet I believe that we can do more to damage Hezbollah without talking too much, without declaring this or that, below the threshold of full-scale war. I think we can do more. Of course, in my suggestion, there are risks of escalation. Of course, I am aware of that. But I think that it is better than the current situation, than the main strategy. It seems like, again, IDF doesn't publish enough about its achievements in Lebanon. And IDF attacked thousands, like around 5,000 times, or targets in Lebanon since this war started. And you have 90,000 Lebanese that are evacuated, or not evacuated, they left the nearby towns to the border. And you have a lot of distractions in these nearby towns, Lebanese towns, because of the IDF strikes, since Hezbollah is hiding its munition and headquarters and tunnels tunnel shafts in these towns, inside these homes and schools, etc. So I think that we can do much more with offensive. I think we can definitely do much more with defensive. And I think we can definitely do much more with regard to collaboration with the international community to back us if we'll have no other choice.
We have so many questions that have come in that are excellent. Going to one anonymous listener said, you mentioned the cost of the Tamir interceptor versus the cost of a Hezbollah rocket. It's been reported that the Iron Beam will become operational in a couple of months. Would it be feasible for Israel to wait and delay an operation until the Iron Beam is deployed?
Yes, but it means the 60,000 Israelis cannot go back to their homes. And Iron Beam is not, again, let's not mislead ourselves. It is not 100% insurance for no damages. I'm not sure, I don't know whether Iron Beam is effective with anti-tank missiles. I truly don't know. I know that Iron Beam is not effective in every kind of weather, and there are limitations to this technology as well. So of course Iron Beam is going to improve our situation, but I don't know how long it's going to take before it is operational. And as you saw with Iron Dome, along the years we improved it. So even when it will become operational, I believe that there will be improvements along the years. The performance is not going to be 97% or 95% right at the beginning.
So you said that at least 60,000 northern Israelis are still living in hotel rooms and waiting to go back to their homes.
Not all of them. 60,000 are evacuated, but most of them are not in hotels anymore. About a quarter or a third are still in hotels. Others just rented apartments or living with relatives because it's really difficult to live in hotels, as you said. Renting apartments means that they have to furniture the apartments from zero. We are helping here one another. They have nothing, not even clothing. They came with summer clothing, then came the winter. They couldn't bring their winter clothing. We gathered clothing, toys, books, everything, from scratch.
It is so beautiful. That is the really beautiful, giving Israeli spirit. It's amazing.
That's what is going to win this war, the Israeli spirit.
That's right. The resilient, we are a plunky plucky, wonderful, resilient people that really I rise to the occasion. My wonderful friend Ellen Heyman also said, she wrote in a question. As you know, there will be elections. We're not quite sure how these elections um, will finish up, but is it urgent, or can Israel wait for after the American elections in the hope that another administration might be more supportive?
I don't want to get into your politics. I have enough of mine. I'm aware of what happened in the United States this week, but all I can say, I wish you good luck. I wish us good luck. And as I've said, for us in Israel, we need help. It doesn't matter. We can't vote for your president, so it doesn't matter who it's going to be. In any way it's going to play out for you, we need your help. This is clear to me.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been noticing in Amit is how many leaders of our quote unquote Arab frenemies have been running to Tehran to meet with Tehran. And we had thought during the Abraham Accords, maybe that epoch was over. But you see that, as Osama bin Laden had once said, if you see a strong horse and a weak horse, we always want to support the strong horse. Do you see that dynamic taking place right now from where you sit?
Yes, but it's important to understand that it's not one or another. If I take the UAE as an example, or Saudi Arabia, it's not that Saudi Arabia, after its normalization, I think, not with Israel, I'm talking about the agreement with Iran, it doesn't mean that it abandoned United States. It means that it wanted to send a message to the United States that we have a problem here, and because we have a problem here, we decided to preserve open channels with Iran. And I think that in the Arab point of view, the best way to handle it, we say keep your friends close but your enemies closer. So I think this is more accurate way to describe the Arab policy of reaching out to Iran. And it's definitely reaching out to Iran, I agree, like what you've seen in the Arab League, that they took off, they announced that Hezbollah is no longer a terrorist organization. This is in order to be capable of having open channels of dialogue with Hezbollah. It's not that all of a sudden the Egyptians believe that Hezbollah is a humanitarian organization. But this is being very pragmatic. Now, I'm not saying it's justified, okay? I think that I wish we could we could take them with us to different directions. This is important. But I can say that this should be the explanation to understand why they are doing that. And what we should take out of that is that it's very important to strengthen the relationship between United States, Israel, and those countries that view Iran as a threat, and that way to prevent them from reaching out to Iran and looking for open channels with Iran as well. But for them, they are not exactly switching sides, okay? They don't see it this way, and we shouldn't see it, not yet at least, okay?
One of our readers wrote in, and this is true, there's been a lot of talk recently about this potential shortage of munitions for the IDF as a result of Gaza and the arms embargo. How seriously would that impact on the war with Hezbollah?
So, as I've said, it is impossible to talk about it over here. But it is clear to me that eventually there are limitations. By the way, not only to Israel. You have Ukraine, Taiwan, Middle East, and maybe even more. And and nobody thought that it's going to go these directions all at the same time. So munition is extremely important. Maybe it is, I don't know, it is not published, but maybe it's one of the reasons why we are taking the time here. But nobody knows exactly what the gaps are, and from understandable reasons, nobody is talking about. In any case, it is clear that you should know that Israel has reservoirs to enable us to face another front, even if it will be open in a full scale that we didn't plan. This is crucial for us, but the question is for how long? And as I've said, the interest of the Iranians is to create a situation of a war of attrition. And that's why the shipments of munition are crucial for the near future.
Thank you. So those of you who've been listening, first of all, and writing in, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to get to all of your questions, many of which I think Sarit has really done a wonderful job of answering. And anyone listening to this webinar today has got to understand why I hold Sarit Sahavi in such high esteem. She, for years and years, has been reading the writing on the wall and has been warning the world about this. She is not only one of my favorite analysts and thinkers, she's just a wonderful human being. So please support her work in her organization. She is just a few kilometers away from the front, and she has a young family that is there as well. It is israel-alma.org, and on her website, there's a donate button. Please support Sarit Sahavi and her wonderful, wonderful work. And also, if you do like what we do every week, please support amitonline.org. We do need your assistance in order to keep these wonderful webinars and these conversations alive. Thank you so much to all of our listeners, and thank you, Sarit, for your wonderful, wonderful work.
Tara, thank you for everything that you do, and it's highly important, and thank you for having me.